Welcome to CIHT Podcasts.
We are looking at the issues associated with the building blocks of our infrastructure, the raw materials that are used for constructing and maintaining our highways. And it is fair to say the materials sector has faced major challenges. Recently with Covid-19, but in the background, there is uncertainty around Brexit and supply chain issues, and then there is a wider challenge of the need to reduce carbon. To explore this, I'm joined by Tim Mole from Fosroc. They are a CIHT knowledge partner. Fosroc is a global manufacturer of specialist construction chemicals that cater to a wide range of sectors, including commercial, industrial, residential, marine and infrastructure covering Europe, the Middle East, North and South Asia. And today we are specifically looking at highways and what changes have and might be required to standards in the future.
So can we start with the immediate impact on Fosroc from Covid-19? Fosroc have a factory in Tamworth, and a lot of factories closed in response to the pandemic, and this created supply chain disruptions at some highway authorities, as they were keen to take advantage of quieter roads and get on with work, but some could not get the materials required. Did you manage to keep the factory open in Tamworth?
Yeah, so as a rule, the business stayed open throughout, not just the UK actually, but globally. We were fortunate to keep Fosroc operating as a business. There were some examples in India, for example, where we did actually close the factories for a short period of time. But in terms of operationally, the COVID situation certainly has thrown up some interesting things that we had to deal with, of course. So normally we have shift patterns where people are working closely together. They would have a break together. They would sort of spend most of their working day in very close proximity. So first things first, we made sure that from a production of product point of view, we could do it, but we could do it safely. So there were staggered shifts. Guys and girls would have slightly different lunch breaks. They would start at different times and then finish at different times. A little bit different for the external team. The external team were working remotely, so they were working from home, which they would normally do. But what we did find that although they were away from the office environment as such, we were able to sort of use our webinars. We were able to use our specification hub team, which is normally based in Tamworth. We were also remote working. And on the whole, we've got through it okay, certainly from a commercial point of view. Just finally, really, on the production element I mentioned, we actually produced early on in the situation an essentials product list. And basically that was focused on transport and highways. We were well aware that government would want to keep this moving forward. So we did a short list of 30 products that were sort of top on the list of production for the guys and girls to make. They covered concrete repairs, waterproofing, sealants, grouts, the sort of the basics of the industry, if you like. So we've been promoting that via LinkedIn and the website, but with a view really just that if people were working, we were working too, and therefore we could back them up.
And you mentioned the specifications hub that you have. Standards are core to how we manage, maintain and operate our transport infrastructure. But obviously, as you've sort of indicated, change has been required in light of COVID-19. So what has been going on in the industry in response to this?
Yeah, I think this has been a challenge. There's no doubt about it, and it will continue to be a challenge for quite a while. However, I would say that there is a bit of a silver lining to some of this, that it will fast forward and it will evolve the thinking of standards across the industry. Where the construction industry as a whole is quite an old-fashioned beast, and it tends to move quite slowly. So dare I say, an instance like Brexit, as we'll talk about later, but in the short term, COVID has made things change a little bit. I think the one thing that the industry has to be aware of is obviously the downturn of just general highways and transport use has invariably led to the requirements, certainly from government, to fast track construction projects. And I've been looking at a couple of examples actually of where sort of standards have already changed to sort of assist that. And one of the standards that has changed is the new longer hours initiative that comes into play very shortly. And this enables sites that would normally be on restriction to close at sort of, the 8 to 5 sort of opening times to actually stay open till 9:30 to catch up on these lost hours. And also within Transport for London, it's interesting to note that going forward, one of the key changes to actually getting people to site will be actually the use of boats. So a lot of the infrastructure, the TfL schemes, such as Battersea and Thames Tideway, are actually looking to ship people in on boats, in a safe way, of course, to get more people to the sites. I think regards standards as a rule, though, it's good that we get the opportunity via CIHT to actually discuss as a large group, because one of the critical things through this is, while standards need to evolve, we need to do it together. We need to work as a working party to do it together. And I think there's still some big challenges remain on this. Only this week, Atkins laying off 280 people in their infrastructure roles. So these people are key people, and there's going to be key challenges as we go forward, not some supply chains, but just making sure that we've got standards that work, that are efficient, that get the job done, and crucially in the current climate, get it done safely. So yeah, it will evolve, it'll be fast forward, it'll be required to move a little bit quicker, but I think we need to do it as a unified front. We can't have different factions setting up different ideas. It's important that we do it through one platform.
And training feels really quite key to that. There's been HSE standards on COVID-19, but what kind of further work might need to be undertaken regarding training for the construction sector to address COVID-19?
Yeah, you're right. And again, it's fine fast tracking projects and trying to get things done quicker. But A, you need the people there to do it, and B, those people need to be trained. So one of the things we've currently undertaken, and we're looking to get greater buy-in from other members of CIHT, is we're actually looking at the minute to undertake a series of application guides. So without going into too much detail of the products as such, we do a range of concrete repair systems for the highways and transport market. Currently, we work to EN 1504 as a standard, which is fine for products, but it doesn't really cover much in terms of the training. So what we're looking to do is produce an application guide for each different product type. So we do a dry spray product, for example, we do a pourable product, and we do a hand applied product. And each of those have very different ways of being applied, and therefore require different training methods. So hopefully over the next few weeks, we'll have a series of application guides, including a few videos as well, just showing contractors and clients and all key stakeholders how they can get people working, but they can get people mixing and applying product following the safe guidance. And as I mentioned at the start, the real hope of Fosroc throughout all of this is that we get other stakeholders come into the idea and actually start to drive a little bit further on the SOP guidance that's been set out from government, and drive a little bit more into the detail of that as to how that affects every specific site. And once we've got that, we can then copy and paste, if you like, onto different projects around the UK.
And the SOP guidance is the standard operating procedures, I think, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. So that's the standard operating procedure, that's it. And as mentioned, in terms of how the government have outlined that, it's been very good. There's been some, it's fairly clear. However, it's high level stuff that would capture most, not just construction sites, but most in general working practice within factory units, industrial, etc. I think the job that we could be doing as experts, the government aren't experts in this in terms of application of product, so therefore we are the experts, and therefore with Fosroc and others involved, I think we can probably look at it from a bottom up rather than a top down approach, and actually start to really put some detail into the actual actions that go on a site or go on a project, and help people understand where they can and can't operate safely.
And standards will evolve more widely. What does Brexit mean for the industry in terms of not just standards, but in a wider sense, in terms of confidence associated with sourcing raw materials?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt about it. It's, whilst the eye's certainly been on Brexit for such a long period of time before the current pandemic, it does feel like we've got to be mindful that when we evolve through COVID, we need to have one eye on Brexit. There's little point to us changing standards quickly because we feel that's the right thing to do, to then find out that when we get to a point where we need to ensure that we need to get raw materials, we need to get people. I mean, just on that, 28% of workers in London are EU. residents. So there's little point as fast tracking things if we then end up finding that we've actually, done ourselves a disservice in terms of some of those key parts. That said, when we look at our own industry, for example, we would look at EN 1504, which is the concrete repair standard, which is a well respected and well used standard across the industry. And via Brexit, it will give us the opportunity to look at that and to make some proposed changes to use domestically. But I think we just need to be mindful of any grand changes on the basis that a lot of those people that, including manufacturers and engineers and specifiers and sort of key stakeholders of projects, are looking at a number of schemes, not just in the UK but across Europe. So we just need to be mindful that any changes that we do fall in with those the existing standards, and they don't sort of stick out like a sore thumb for those that would normally quite comfortably write a standard for here or anywhere else. We just need to make sure that any changes we do are mainly around efficiency, I would suggest. We've got a lot of standards that are written on a normal working day, a normal working practice, but of course we're not going to be, there is going to be a new normal as such. So we need to be mindful that any changes we make are actually beneficial. They're safe, of course, but they're beneficial and they're not actually at odds with the EN 1504 standard as a whole. A few changes, fine, but I would want to make sure that we keep fairly close to some of those existing standards. I mean, the final thing I would say really is it's joint consensus. What we don't want is splinter groups of people going out and sort of deciding that this is the right way forward or that is the right way forward. So again, via someone like yourselves at the CIHT, it's critical that we have one voice, and there may be some disagreements on certain elements, fine, but in actual fact, if we've got one voice that covers off the guy or girl on the tools at the start and the client at the top of the chain, then so long as we're doing that, then actually we could evolve standards nicely to cover both our current pandemic situation and the EN 1504 standard via Brexit further down the line.
And you'd mentioned concrete. That's one of the most widely used man-made materials in existence. It is second only to water as the most consumed resource on the planet. But while cement, the key ingredient in concrete, has shaped much of our built environment, it also has a massive carbon footprint. Cement is the source of about 8% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. So in an industry that uses a lot of concrete, what are the steps being made to move to reducing the carbon associated with it?
Yeah, I think it's just following on from your numbers there. It's staggering to think, isn't it? Really, it's second only to water. However, furthermore, I think there's about 38% of the whole global carbon is actually linked back into construction. So again, as was mentioned earlier in the conversation here, it's fine to speed things up. It's fine to put more people on projects and send more material there. But what we can't afford to do, what we cannot be guilty of, is trading that speed for greater environmental impact. And it's critical that certainly in the transport industry, we evolve to understand what we can do better on the environmental impact. Again, coming back to the COVID situation, the fact that in London, TfL are investigating the option to use boats to get people in and out of sites is a fantastic way of evolving. But that doesn't happen everywhere. We can't look at that as being a one size fits all. I think we're all responsible. As a business, I'd point to a couple of things that we've done specifically in terms of our packaging. We do a lot of work on the airport industry, and we have a particular product in there, one of our Fireflex products, that is evolved to be used in larger reusable drums. So traditionally, most manufacturers would use cartridges, 380mm cartridges, plastic cartridges. Some can be recycled, very few can though. The reality is that a lot of that goes to waste. And just as an example, a 400 litre drum of this particular product, Fireflex 555, equates to 1,052 plastic cartridges. That is a lot of plastic cartridges that end up just going to going to waste. And just, if I can, finally, with regards to another project and another idea that was put into practice, was the Albury Viaduct, the elevated carriageway repair that's been going on in the Black Country on the M5. And again, traditionally, bags of material would be sent out, 25 kg bags, shrunk wrap on pallets. And yes, some of that can be recycled, but in reality, it's a lot of transport going to site. It's a lot of waste being sent through the project. And again, on that particular project, we came up with a way of delivering materials in 500 kilogram Hessian sacks that were easy to dispose of, easy to get back to the business and dispose of correctly. And we've pushed that out further now to actually supplying silo grouts. So silo grouts of 28 tonne of material, all within silo, rather than having bags and bags of material. And again, just to put that into some sort of number, you're talking, the best part of, over 1,025 kg bags replaced by one trailer, one tanker rather, blowing in that material into a silo that stays static on the project. So safer in terms of people lifting and moving bags around, but crucially, it's a far more it's a far better way to reduce our impact on the environment. I think away from products, we should let's think about what we've been doing over the last few months as well with technology. We're now carrying out more site meetings via WhatsApp and Teams than we've done by driving to the sites. And whilst we will naturally see a balance of this going back towards the face-to-face meeting, which should always be priority in our industry, I think it has opened a lot of people's eyes, certainly our business's eyes, as to how effective you can be when you've got the technology like Teams and Zoom and various other things out there. You can get so much done. And we've certainly seen via our specification team meetings with 5 or 6 key stakeholders take place perfectly fine, no issue whatsoever, over Teams, sharing documents, sharing details. And yeah, whilst the element of work getting to site and helping people face to face should never be ignored, it is an interesting evolution from the COVID situation that we'd be fools to turn our backs on. So yeah, a few examples there, but you're absolutely right. It's certainly something that we need to focus on, and hopefully some of the longevity and the practice that we've had out of the COVID situation will naturally occur in going forward, and we will certainly be advocates of that.
So it feels like there's a lot in the mix at the moment, and you've covered a lot of ground. I guess as a final question, there is a lot going on. Where do you see the future of standards, and what needs to happen, I guess, for the industry to get to a consensus?
I think you're right. It's going to be some baby steps, but it's going to be key for the communication. All that we've talked about today, well, nothing will happen with that unless we actually work as a close-knit team and drive this forward. So certainly for my particular feelings, and certainly for Fosroc as a whole, we'd be very keen to involve very quickly with a number of different stakeholders via CIHT to discuss their challenges, their needs, and how we can kind of work together. We've mentioned the application guides, for example, that we're looking at. Well, how can we factor those in to projects on the highways network? How can we factor those in to work on the rail and beyond, into water, into wind, etc.? So ideally, I would like to see over the coming months the idea of perhaps a steering committee, a monthly get together, quite a loose get together, if you like, just a chat around the table to talk about the initial challenges. And then on the back of that, why not then start to draw up a few more ideas that we can start put together and then feed through the industry. We cover a lot of different backgrounds in CIHT. There's a lot of different people that have a lot of different voices, and they're very useful to hear. And it's so vital, I think, now that we've done our little bit on the application guides. There'll be experts out there that can no doubt feed in some information in terms of the logistics, in terms of the site working practices, etc. So yeah, I would like to say in summary that yeah, we've made a start, we've done bits and pieces, we've got ideas, but crucially now we need to do this as a team, as a unified front, to work together. So yeah, hopefully over the next few months we can see something to that end.
Well, thank you. That was an interview with Tim Mole from Fosroc. Thank you for listening.